second. I do want to start, though, with a couple of stories that are in the news this week, and that is the continuation of the ongoing dumpster fire that is the Dallas Mavericks. Good on the Mavericks, by the way. We're forgetting what day we're recording this. Wednesday night, beating the Sacramento Kings to extend their season. Good for them. Good for that team.
Is it?
Well, I mean,
once you're in, I guess you want to win. You want to win.
You know, you can see like Anthony Davis clearly wants it. Like these guys that are playing want it. But the front office continues to step right in the old spit bucket over and over and over again. This week, Mavs executives Rick Welts and Nico Harrison met with a few Dallas-based reporters. The transcript of this Q&A is unbelievable. Like I took some time this week to just read through the entire 50,000 words of it. And I encourage everyone else to read it. It begins with Welts basically trying to steer the conversation towards the Mavs' plan to build a new arena before it, not surprisingly, devolving into Nico Harrison getting pummeled for the Luka Doncic trade.
But by the way, all fair questions.
All fair questions.
Those reporters asked completely fair questions. He just did not have a good answer for one of them.
Shout out to our guy, Tim McMahon.
Oh, man, yeah.
Tim McMahon, who after Rick Welts, it gives a monologue that was the verbal version of the Everything is Awesome song from the Lego movie. I
thought he was filibustering, just trying to run out of time so Nico wouldn't have to answer any questions.
I didn't realize I had to scroll that far down to get to the first question. But straight out of the chute, Tim McMahon says to Nico Harrison, everybody wants to see you fired. Why should Patrick Dumont keep you? Right out of the gate.
By the way,
there was so many.
A fair question.
Fair question. He was throwing heaters, and some of the other guys there that were throwing heaters, Tim Cato, Louis Scruggs, they had some good questions at that Q&A, which by the way was we don't even need to get into the fact that they didn't have it televised, and for a while they weren't going to let the reporters record the conversation, which is nuts. You're just trying to
accurately say what happened.
Try to say that, but by not having recorded on the record stuff. And we've done that before. When you go into the lottery room, you have to give up your all your devices, and it makes it difficult to record accurate quotes. And I would think you'd want accurate quotes at a press gaggle. But
in this case, they didn't, because the accurate quotes were not good.
It was not
Spoiler alert.
It's been reported that this presser was entirely the idea of Patrick Dumont. Rachel, what stands out the most to you from this press conference?
I mean, Nico, I think it was 6 times people counted, said defense wins championships.
Oh, that was great.
Which is really questionable considering the defense they had last year got them into the finals and wasn't even the biggest issue they had in the finals.
No, they were 5th just to interject, 5th in the playoffs in defensive rating. And if you watch that final series, defense was not in the top 10 reasons they lost.
Look, I think Patrick Dumont wanted yet again to try to turn public opinion, and it's not going to work. It's not going to work for a couple reasons. First of all, there is no defense of this decision. There is nothing that would stand up, no matter how many chances they have to get the message out, to get the wording right, to have the right number of reporters with the right number of recording devices. There is nothing they can ever say that will justify this trade. It was a mistake in every element, from wanting to do it in the first place, to the timing of when they did it, to who they talked to what they got back. Every single part of this was a bad idea. And I think Patrick Dumont, because he approved this bad idea, because he gave Nico free rein without any checks or balances, I've said it a lot of times, Nico's a very smart guy. I have a ton of respect for him. I've known him, as you have, for 25 plus years. But you cannot be the only voice in the room when you're talking about something this big. You need somebody just as powerful as you in the organization to check and balance you. And Patrick Dumont hasn't set it up that way after Mark Cuban was told, oh, I'm sorry, we actually don't need you as part of this franchise. There's no way to justify this, so they need to stop. And I think that Nico probably knows they need to stop. And I imagine that Rick Welts, who knows a thing or two about a thing or two, knows that they need to stop. That's why he tried to, throw the greatest block in there with the arena and this and that, the other. But
Rick Welts stepped in it pretty good too there. Rick Welts tried to compare the Luka Doncic trade to 3 different deals that he's been a part of.
Well, there's no, it doesn't work no matter what he said.
What is it like? But
he said the Monty Ellis trade, right?
Oh no, but I was going to say, what is it they say though about if you have nothing to say, don't say anything, right?
Yes.
Just don't say it. They'd be like, we said we're going to say. Rick Welts going out there and comparing the Luka trade to Lenny Wilkins for Butch Beard in Seattle, Stephon Marbury to the Knicks back in the day, and the Monty Ellis deal, which freed up opportunity for Steph Curry, like this Luka deal is going to free up an opportunity for nebulous draft pick, X over the next 5 years.
At least those were successful things, even though they weren't nearly on the scale of Luka Doncic. That Jason Kidd, who you and I also like a lot, is saying it's, quote, cool that this is compared to the Babe Ruth trade to the Yankees. You're Boston in that scenario.
Yeah.
Jason?
I can tell you it's not cool. It's not cool.
It's
not going to be cool. And if it's anything like the Babe Ruth trade, your name and the people involved's name will live in infamy because people from Boston know everybody, the manager, the general manager, the owner of that team that traded away Babe Ruth. They will live on. You will be in books. You will be talked about on radio shows and podcasts forever.
You know the name of the play? No, Nanette, right?
Oh, yeah, no.
Right? Yeah. Babe Ruth traded to raise money for a play, and on-Broadway play that also failed.
Yes.
But yeah, my colleague at Fox Sports, Kevin Wild, did an amazing look-upable on YouTube or Instagram or TikTok, whatever, bit about the Babe Ruth trade. After Jason said that, I highly recommend everyone to check it out after you finish listening to this. But
it's not something you want to be connected to.
There's nothing he could have said that would have justified this, and he needs to stop. And again, I think he knows it. I think Rick knows it. Patrick Dumont clearly does not know it. New owner syndrome. There we go.
I just want to unpack a couple of things on what was said there, because I read this transcript twice, and it was just amazing. Nico is using the 2.5 quarters against the Houston Rockets as evidence that this team is a championship contender. Now, even if you believe that, and I'm inclined to believe that a Kyrie, Luka, Lively, Gafford, all the pieces there, I'm inclined to believe that that team can compete in the Western Conference. But that team may not exist ever again. Like Kyrie Irving is going to be coming back from an ACL injury next year. He's 33 years old. Anthony Davis is 32. Klay Thompson is 35. And all these guys have had major injuries over the last few years.
Which, by the way, you knew when you made this deal. Nico kept saying, I have a short window here. Why would you ever shorten your window, especially when dealing with players who are older and injury prone? This was all foreseeable. I understand that Kyrie's particular injury involved him banging into someone, and that was not something that, has to do with Jason Kidd's minutes and how much he was playing him. Being tired, having your body be tired, being of a certain age, having withstood a lot of injuries before, those all contribute to how hurt you get when the body clangs into another body. And it was foreseeable that with an older, injury-prone roster, shortening your window is not a good idea. There's nothing they can say to justify this.
And you can't, again, you can't even say that you're extending your window when the team that you broke up went to the finals last year. It's not like you traded away a guy that got knocked out in the second round. You went to the finals and lost to a team that I don't think anybody was beaten in the playoffs last year.
No, and by the way, I think that we've been so amazed at the impact of this on the Mavericks, and it's just been so wide from the money they've been bringing in or the lack thereof to the fan base to how the team will ever recover from this, having not had draft picks, things like that. We haven't really stepped back to look at the impact, how this is going to sort of shape the next 5 years to more in the entire NBA. I think this move will end up being on par with the move of Kevin Durant going to the Golden State Warriors. I think that this will happen, and if it's not this year, it's after this summer once they get themselves a defensive center presence inside. They will go on and be, my guess, I'm just sitting here guessing, but I would say that they have a good chance to win, 2 titles in the 4 years after this summer, maybe? If I said that, nobody would call me crazy, right?
I mean, it depends how long LeBron can play.
Well, so that's the other part of this. So I think it's going to be Warriors-like, KD to the Warriors-like, and the fact that you're going to have a, quote, unfair team that has an advantage over almost every team that they play, no matter what everyone does with their roster. But LeBron's window has now been extended because LeBron, for the first time in his entire career, can lay back for the first 3 quarters of these playoff games if he needs to and let Austin Reeves and Luka go and show up for the fourth quarter the way he does, anchoring the defense in a way he can't do for 4 quarters anymore, but can do for the fourth if he's rested. And all of a sudden, Savannah James said that she wants LeBron to play through when Bryce is in the league.
There we go.
So that's not next season where he'll be at Arizona. It's the season after that. You don't think that if Luka's winning him rings, he's going to just stay?
Yeah.
He certainly could.
I think the only thing that would take LeBron out is ownership of a Vegas team.
Okay, but if he has the chance, and this is the second part of where I don't think we've really looked at the wide enough impact of this trade. If he has the chance to tie Kobe, or what about tie Michael Jordan for rings? The one thing the people who are the MJ over LeBron detractors say all the time is 6 finals, 6 rings, baby. I think that LeBron would be very interested in winning ring 5 and 6. Ownership will always be there.
Yeah.
And if Luka Doncic and this trade make them the favorites in even just 2 finals in the next 5 years, which is not a strange, that's not a crazy notion.
Yeah.
That this trade has decimated the Mavericks, changed the competitive balance of the league for the next 4 or 5 years at least, and possibly changing completely the LeBron James, Michael Jordan, Kobe conversation. That's crazy for one personnel move.
It is crazy. I have to run through, though, a couple of things that stood out, because I have a whole list of things that stood out from this thing.
It's so crazy. You can't even get through them.
It was wild. Nico defends the Luka deal by pointing to some of the other deals that he made that people criticized. And he's right on the facts there. There was criticism of the decision to acquire Kyrie Irving. There was more criticism to pay Kyrie Irving in a deal that looks obvious to make. Now, the Gafford deal was criticized. The Washington deal was criticized because of the draft capital. I remember texting members of the Mavericks organization, like, man, you give up a lot for these guys. So he's right on there. But none of these guys are Luka Doncic. None of these guys are transcendent franchise players. We talked about the defense wins champion stuff, 5th best defensive rating in the playoffs, okay? Said he has no regrets on the deal. I don't believe that for 1 minute, not at all. Suggested during this Q&A that Luka may not have signed the Supermax. Why are we even doing that? Why are we suggesting that Luka was not going to sign a Supermax deal that would have guaranteed him $350+ million? Why are we even playing that game?
Didn't want to leave, that he was crying openly in front of the entire country just to be back there and thinking about what they did to him and how they ripped him out of Dallas. Trae Young, of all people who will forever be connected to Luka Doncic, tweeted to a clip of him on the bench crying. He said he was never going to leave.
No.
And that's all the tweet said.
Wasn't going to leave. Even if it wasn't Luka, nobody walks away from the Supermax.
No.
They don't. They don't walk away from the Supermax. You sign it now, and if you don't want to be there 2 years from now, you leave.
And same thing with the Mavericks, by the way.
Yes.
If they had signed him to that deal, and then they wanted to trade him after
a year,
27, they could have.
Insane. I'm just going to speed through these because there's so much to talk about. We talked about the Lenny Wilkins stuff. That was Rick Welts. The other thing Welts did was Welts was asked about the Mavs' ability to sell tickets because he brought up this whole 75-80% renewal rate. I don't really believe that either. He said, remember Kyrie Irving, remember him as that's the carrot to sell tickets. When has Kyrie been this huge ticket seller?
I would say that people love Kyrie Irving.
They do
the most
love him, but
popular
he's
shoe
not
for years and years and years, but he's not playing for the first half of the season.
That too. And for the record, Kyrie, he now owns the Dallas Mavericks.
Oh my God.
He can be a free agent this summer. Even with an Achilles injury. Dude. They're going to have to give him whatever contract he wants.
Yeah.
You're going to wed yourself to Kyrie Irving until he's in his late 30s.
Yeah.
That. So that press conference, such as it was bonkers. My advice, stop doing them. Just stop doing them and you'll be better for it. The other piece of news I want to get to came out of Sacramento. Monty McNair out as general manager in Sac. Not a big surprise given how the season ended. I think we saw the writing on the wall when his assistant GM, Wes Wilcox, took a job at the University of Utah. If that doesn't tell you changes are coming, then nothing else does. Scott Perry is the new GM. We don't really need to get into that right now. But I just want to note, Rachel, how quickly things can change. In 2023, Mike Brown was the coach of the year. That same year, Monty McNair was the executive of the year. And now they're both out of a job. And I think that speaks more to the culture in Sacramento than anything else. I understand Monty McNair did not distinguish himself the last couple of years. The decisions he made to, not add more 3-and-D players, not that they're easy to find, but not going out and trying to get the Dorian Finney-Smiths of the world and, these guys that defend multiple positions and make threes. also the decision to reconstitute the 2022 Chicago Bulls didn't really make a lot of sense either. Still, to fire the coach that had helped get you through the wilderness and then firing the GM that was the exec of the year 2 years ago it says a lot about the Sacramento Kings, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, that's actually what's in my notes is attention span, very short.
No.
I think the Sacramento Kings have been the prime version of that, and obviously they have a culture problem there. They've had it all the way back until, they should never have fired Mike Malone, if you ask me. I mean, there's a bunch there. We've gone through years and years of mess-ups in the front office there and court, et cetera, in Sacramento. But I do think the entire NBA attention span is growing short. I mean, there's a number of coaches that have been fired 2 years after winning Coach of the Year or winning a title.
Championship,
We just saw it in Denver. We just saw it in a couple other cities. I mean, the attention span and I mean, the lifespan of guys in this league has just gone up to such a high churn rate. And I don't know if that's because with the CBA being as locked down as it is now with the first apron and the second apron and the eighth apron and all of that stuff, it's the only place you can really make changes. That there isn't that much roster flexibility anymore, and maybe that's why we're seeing so much movement. But no award, including the NBA Finals trophy, is safe if you're a coach or a GM, because a couple years later, you're the first one out.
Yeah, and this is a team that's not going to be rebuilt easily. I saw was Domantas Sabonis. He said at the end of his exit interviews, what do you need, a point guard? Well, you had one, and De'Aaron Fox, and now you're rebuilding around what? Sabonis and Zach LaVine?
If Sabonis even wants to stay there.
Yeah, even if he did. I don't look, and I'm not going to beat up on Sabonis, I don't look at him as a championship center because I don't think he plays enough defense to do it. You're in a tough spot. Scott Perry and them, they're going to have to rebuild. But Vivek Ranadive, it starts at the top, man. This is your organization. You just... When the going got tough with Mike Brown, you cut him loose. The going gets tough with Monty McNair, you cut him loose. Look at the successful franchises that are out there right now at the top. Oklahoma City, Sam Presti's been around there since they were the Sonics. Yep. Cleveland, Kobe Altman's been
Miami
there
Heat.
in some capacity for a long time. Miami, Boston, right? Brad Stevens goes from coach to general manager. You need to establish a culture, and that requires the culture not changing all the time. So, this is about Vivek Ranadive and his ownership thing. Well, there's plenty of time to talk Sacramento.
Well, Scott Perry used to work for James Dolan, so maybe he's uniquely qualified. We'll see.
To understand dysfunctional culture? Yeah, I think that's probably true. All right, it is that time, Rachel, to get into the award ballots that we both submitted on Monday or Tuesday before 6 o'clock, right? Mm-hmm. They came in overnight on Tuesday, and you immediately have 12 hours to fill them out and take care of it. I want to go through these in the order of most difficult.
Okay.
I guess we should start with MVP because that is the most polarizing. And that was, I think, for a lot of people, a pretty difficult vote to make. So your MVP choice this year was who?
I will say what everybody else has said. I have to preface it by saying this was extremely hard. It came down to the tiniest hair of tiniest hairs. And I think what's going to end up happening is you are going to see Shai Gilgeous-Alexander winning this MVP and not by 1 or 2 votes. I think you will see him, all the straw polls that have been done leading up to this, Tim Bontemps does a good one at ESPN, have been 70-30 Shai. I think that might switch a little bit because of just the closing argument that Jokic made. But I think a lot of voters were hair-splittingly close between the two of them. But just the majority is what happened to me is when I went to the hair split of the hair split of the hair split of the hair split, I had to go with Jokic. Woo. See, that's a mental slip.
Oh.
I had to go with Shai because, and I would have gone with Jokic, by the way, because it had an incredible individual season. But I had to go with Shai because 18 wins. This team, what he led this team to, almost 70 wins, the way they play offense and defense. You talk about Jokic's on-off numbers. Shai's on-off numbers are even more impressive in a lot of areas. I can only justify it so much, though, because Jokic is the better player. I talked to James Harden for a little bit this morning before the Clippers left for Denver, and I said, who's the best player? And he said, well, no question, Jokic is the best player. But even he said, all the players, we want to see Shai win MVP because of the season he had and the winning. And I think that really factors in for them more than maybe some people on the outside who are just looking at stats, see it. But he goes, but of course Jokic is the best player.
Yeah, I think you can. Look, I voted for Shai as well. So that's 2 votes for Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. I think you can make a strong argument Jokic is the best player. A lot of people do. I think you can also make a pretty good argument that Shai is the more complete player. You know, I mean, Jokic, he is the greatest offensive player that I've ever seen. Like, he's astonishing. Like, how he can control a game and the things he can do on that end of the floor are remarkable. He averaged a triple-double this season. Average triple-double. We know that Oscar Robertson and Russell Westbrook have done it. He's the first center to do it. And, like, he's won 3 MVPs. This is arguably the best season of the bunch. that says something about what Nikola Jokic is. But Shai's numbers are astonishing, too. Like, he averaged 32.7 points per game this year. Even if you took away the free throws from everybody, he'd still be leading the league in scoring. 52% shooting, about 38% from three, 6.5 assists, 5 rebounds. He led the NBA in win shares, the best since Steph in his MVP season in 15-16. And he has the lowest turnover percentage of any player with his usage rate or higher in the last 20 seasons. So offensively, he's not as good as Jokic, but he's not a slouch either. Like, he is a dynamic offensive player. And then you have to talk about the defense, right? Like, Lou Dort is the leader of Oklahoma City's defense. Caruso's a great defensive player. Jalen Williams, Cason Wallace, Isaiah Hartenstein, they're a good defensive team. But Shai is a defensive stud. Like, Shai has a chance. He probably won't get there because you usually don't get guys like him on the list. But he has a case to be made to be on the all-defensive team. 6'6", 6'11" wingspan, uses those tools incredibly. Led the NBA in defensive win shares, ranked top 5 in steals, finished in the top 25 in blocks. Of the regulars in the NBA, which they define as players who play at least 24 minutes per game, Shai is 5th in defensive rating. Like, he is as good defensively, maybe not as good, but close to as good defensively as he is offensively. And that, to me, has to be incorporated into all this. Like, I'm not going to Jokic bash and say he's a terrible defensive player, but he's nowhere near on Shai's level defensively.
I mean, it's hard to even know how good a defensive player he could have been this year because he was so busy cleaning up every mess on the court for the Denver Nuggets.
He's never been
elite. He certainly, though, I think because he was a bad defender earlier in his career, he sort of carries that stigma with some people, and that's just not true anymore. He's not a bad defender at all. In fact, there's some advanced metrics that go in his favor. I just think you have to look at, how the team did and the fact that, as much as Jokic, I did think was the, little boy holding his finger in the hole in the dam and all of that stuff, like, that's not the season that an MVP helps deliver to your franchise. I will say again, as I have said now for 15 years, we make a mistake in this league by only voting for MVP and leaving the rest on the floor. The NFL has different awards for who had the best season versus who is the best player. The NHL has different awards for who had the best scoring season versus who was the best player. We do not keep track of that. And I'm not saying this because I had to, hair split my vote here and I couldn't decide who to vote for until the end and all of that stuff. I'm saying it because sometimes the guy who deserves MVP, and in my mind, that was Shai this year, right? That's who I voted for, is not the best player on earth. And we are a league that makes me track who the 8th best rookie was this year, Chris. History will know who the 8th best rookie in 2024-2025 is.
Who is it?
But there is no
I don't know which
there is no marker of does everyone right now consider the best player on earth. And you can sit there and say, hey, we knew it was MJ when it was MJ. And we knew it was LeBron when it was LeBron. History fades. You've got a whole generation of fans now who never saw Jordan play and are very quick to discount him, which is unbelievable to people our age or certainly older than us. There's definitely guys older than that you and I never saw play, and we're supposed to be, we're longtime stewards of this. We've both been around for multiple decades here. History fades. We have what the record books tell us in terms of how good someone was, and we have no marker for that. And the idea that we keep such a statistical record of who this esteemed voting panel thought was the 8th, 9th, and 10th best rookies for that year, and we don't say this is the consensus best player, you don't have to call it MVP. MVP can stay exactly as it is. Call it something else. They put Jordan's name on the MVP. They should take it off. Just make this the Jordan Trophy or something. But I'm just saying it's crazy to me that we don't keep track of that. And I think that's something that sort of hangs in the back of voters' minds sometimes when we think, oh, what do we award for what? Shea, I think, had the best season. I just think he did. And I think that he delivered not just only on the court statistically with all those numbers you read off, but in terms of value to his team. He pushed that team. He held that team together. It's still the youngest team in the NBA.
To start the year,
and he has led them. So I think he's most valuable in all the ways, not just with the numbers. But in my opinion, and I think if you polled most people around the league, including players, they would say, yeah, but Nikola Jokic is the best guy right now. He is the guy that if I had to win one game tomorrow, I mean, let me ask you that. You said you think maybe Shea is? If you had to win one game tomorrow, just one game, not who you'd started franchise with, who's younger, who's older, X, Y, Z, one game.
I mean,
who would your first draft pick be?
Well, it's Luka. Honestly, he's not going to win MVP this year because eligibility issues, right?
God forbid we make guys eligible to win who are good.
I mean, honestly, if I had to win one game, I'd probably take him.
Would you?
Yeah.
I'd take Jokic.
I mean, he's scary. Just watching what he did in the playoffs last year. Look, Jokic did it a couple of years ago, but Luka dragged that team to the finals. Kyrie was good, and PG Washington was good.
Not according to Nico Harrison, he did.
I mean, he definitely did. The eyeball test says he did that. There's no doubt about that. The winning part matters too. If there's a tie-breaking criteria, to me, it's winning. 18 more wins.
That was my tiebreaker, honestly. Because I think you get hung up in the numbers. You read off great stats, but the Jokic people can do the same thing.
We both get them. We get the emails from Denver, Oklahoma City. They're all there. 18 more wins, having the Western Conference, which is the varsity conference, wrapped up since St. Patrick's Day. They had 50 wins before anybody else in the West had 40. It was just a remarkable season, a remarkable year for Shea and for Oklahoma City. To me, he's the MVP. Quickly, I went Giannis, Tatum. Is that you too? Were you there?
Okay, I actually Giannis, Tatum. Trend. I'm curious what you did in the fifth, though.
LeBron was my fifth choice. And it was for a long time Donovan Mitchell, but the way that LeBron closed the season and the way that his team closed the season, a little bit of an edge. His numbers were great too. They were comparable as well. The way LeBron closed the year, that gave him fifth on my ballot.
So I know a lot of people, especially now that all NBA is positionless, just carbon copy, cut and paste their MVP ballot and put that on the first team because to a lot of people it's the same thing. It is not the same thing to me. MVP, to me, that race and how I rank people within that race has a lot more to do with your value to that team, how you impacted the team winning overall. It's not just about how good a player you are. Whereas to me, my All-NBA selections, because again, we have no way of noting who the best player is, so All-NBA tries to make up for some of that. That's about who was the best player and kind of did these individual things. So for me, in my MVP ranking, I actually put Jason Tatum ahead of Giannis Antetokounmpo. And I understand, trust me, I understand how good a season Giannis has had.
And
Don't
how
come
he
after
closed,
me
too.
because I know it, right? In fact, he has a case, by the way, that was his best season, and he has MVPs in his cabinet. So, just like Jokic, why didn't I win? I did better than when I was the MVP. Absolutely, but the Bucks were not as much as he dragged them to win games. He did not do for that team what I saw Jason Tatum, who is the most available superstar in the NBA, who is unquestionably the best player on that team this season, do for the Celtics. So, because of the way I look at the MVP, I had Tatum ahead of Giannis, and then I put Donovan Mitchell as my fifth because of the way he approached the season to me, even though some of his numbers are down. He had the biggest impact on winning, the way he brought everyone in, the way he purposely sacrificed some of those stats, the way he led the team of players who, frankly, never expected to have themselves in that conversation when he always did. He thought he did. That mattered to me. On All-NBA, I put LeBron in my fifth spot. In the first team,
so
because I see that differently. But it's because I think they're for different things.
Yeah,
I really do.
I get it. I can't argue with any of that. LeBron's defense in the post-Luka landscape and how he helped the Lakers close to the third seed, that gave him a slight edge for number 5.
But isn't that, I voted for him first team All MVP. I don't want this to turn into splitting hairs on LeBron James because what he's doing is incredible. Yeah. But you do have to look a little bit about every single piece around him made that easier this year than it has literally ever been before for him.
Definitely. I can accept, if I had a sixth, it would have been Donovan Mitchell. Yeah. And the same thing probably for you on first team All NBA, it would have been Donovan there too. All right. The toughest one for me outside of MVP was most improved. Okay. I want to get this out of the way at the top. I did not vote for Cade Cunningham because I don't believe guys like Cade Cunningham should be eligible for this award.
So he was nowhere on your
He
ballot.
was nowhere on my ballot. I didn't vote for Cade for the same reasons I didn't vote for John Morant in 2022 and Brandon Ingram in 2020. I don't believe when you are the first, second, or third pick that you should be winning a most improved award. Like, you're supposed to improve when you're that high in the draft. Like, Cunningham, he's been outstanding this season. Like, the Luka Doncic comps are real. Like, you watch him play, and I hope a lot of people that didn't watch a lot of Pistons watch this first-round series against New York. Cade Cunningham cooked the Knicks in the regular season. Like, this could be a big breakout series for Cade. But he averaged 23 points per game last year and almost 8 assists. Like, he was really friggin' good last year.
Yeah.
Like, he's healthier, he's tougher, he's doing a little bit of different things, but this to me is the natural progression of the former number one pick in the draft. So guys like that, I wipe away right away. Number one on my ballot was Ivica Zubac. Zubac. Number one on the ballot. Because 8 years in, I thought I knew what Zubac was. He is a legitimate starting center on a contending team, a double-ish type of guy. He'll shoot 60+% from the floor, block some shots on the other end. He has just gone bonkers this season. His scoring is up 5 points from last season. He's pulling monster rebounding numbers, like 12 and a half per game. He is a beast in the post, averaging, I think, 1.1 points per possession. That's Jokic, Joel Embiid territory. Like, that, he is a post player with the scoring prowess of those great centers in the NBA. And then defensively,
I was going to say, then he can defend.
he's even better. He's even better. I mean, some of these numbers, courtesy of our friends over the Clippers, led the NBA in total rebounds, third in defensive win shares, had a plus-minus in the top 10. Among players averaging at least 30 minutes, Zubac is fourth in defensive estimated plus-minus. Rachel, this is a guy that's never been an all-star. This year, he is a legit candidate for All-NBA. So Zubac went number one on my list. Who went number one on yours?
Well, Zubac went number two on my list.
Okay.
So I certainly agree with you, everything you just said. I ended up going with Dyson Daniels.
He was number two on mine. There you go.
And
Great minds.
Boom, 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 boom.
Ah.
I just think, you know, going from a bench role player like he was with the Pelicans to what he has been able to do in Atlanta. I spent some time with the Hawks earlier this season, and I mean, this story is incredible. And it's backed up by what he has done on the court. And he has just provided kind of an entire different dimension they didn't have. Obviously, it is not enough to get them out of the play-in tournament this year, but I just think that he's going to be an asset to them for years to come. And to go from where he was, to go with your whole, I don't vote for Cade Cunningham type players because it was obvious they were going to improve. Dyson Daniels being on any of these ballots for anything this year, if I had told you that last summer, by next year, Dyson Daniels is going to be in the NBA awards conversation, you thought it was crazy. You might have asked who Dyson Daniels was.
Probably would have. Yeah. He was number two on my list. All the things you said. Tripled his scoring average. Led the league in steals. Incredible.
Also, he's
season.
the best nickname, I think, going in the NBA right now.
Yes.
Because he led the league in steals. And he's from Australia. He is called the Great Barrier Thief.
It's a great
It's
nickname.
so good.
It's a great nickname.
Come on.
It's great. Last vote I got was Christian Brown. He was number three on mine. Who was your
Sorry, I closed my thing to look at
third
the
vote?
thing.
Christian Brown, just my reasons were, stepped right into that slot vacated by KCP, doubled his scoring average, flirted with that kind of KCP-esque 40% from three-point range. He was mine.
So because he would have been mine if I was rigid and closed off like you, Chris, but I am not. My MIP.
That's what they call me, rigid and closed off.
Exactly. My MIP voter tab was open to all people, including the Cade Cunninghams of the world, who I did put at third. I would not have put him higher than that, and I don't think he deserves to win.
That is such a cop-out.
It is
I take
nuts.
back our great minds there. That is such a cop-out.
I think differently than you do.
gotta
That's not a cop-out.
put it on that
Look,
list.
I think we see plenty of top three players bust too. I mean, you can't say just because a guy was drafted in the top three, he's guaranteed to be a
He's definitely
success.
not. Like Anthony
He's
Bennett's
not.
proof of that.
And he's contributed to winning in Detroit in ways other than his scoring that I think he really grew as a leader and improved at sort of a rate that we did not expect.
Yeah.
So to me, in a way, he is a representative on my ballot of those guys who you talk about. I just would never put someone like that one or two, but I do think that by the time we get to three, there's some space for guys like that, and that's who I put.
All right. The next one, and I'm not even going to call this category tough because I think it's going to be a landslide, but Coach of the Year. I thought it got really interesting towards in the second half of the season. My vote went to Kenny Atkinson. And
really, after giving me such a hard time a few months ago.
Well, I was just, opening up the discussion. And I think Kenny's going to win 90+%, if not 100% of the vote. He had an unbelievable year. He was hired with a mandate, and that mandate was to develop Evan Mobley, and that's exactly what he did. Evan Mobley has become a all-NBA caliber talent on both ends of the floor.
Yep.
He transformed this team into what they were the first in offensive rating this year. Went from 16th at the end of last year to first in offensive rating while they still maintained a top 10 defense. Like, that is a remarkable coaching feat. Even if you're taking over a team, that's pretty good. JB Bickerstaff was number 2 on my list. I mean, they improved by 30 wins this year. There were 14 wins last year and a laughingstock of the league at that point. Now they're a real threat to win a first-round series against the New York Knicks in the first round. And Ime Udoka was number 3 on my list because, the Rockets were a lottery team last year, number 2 in the Western Conference this year. Those young players, Ime's gotten a lot out of them. So Atkinson, Bickerstaff, Udoka were my list.
If we had gone to 4, Udoka would have been my 4th. If this was a what have you done the last 2 years award, Udoka would have been on my ballot. Instead, I put Ty Lue at number 3 at the same first 2 you did. But I just think if we look at what happened in Philadelphia is a great example. And by the way, I don't blame Nick Nurse specifically, but when I look at the Clippers as a whole, and whether it's James Harden you're giving credit to for this, whether it's Zubac you're giving credit to for this, whether it's Ty Lue or the front office or however you want to apportion it, this was a situation where you had the biggest star dealing with a injury that was a mystery that no one knew when or if he was going to come back from. Sound familiar with Joel Embiid? You lost Paul George, right? And you then have James Harden steward, Zubac stepped up to, and Ty Lue coach a team that instead of falling into disarray, the way the Sixers did, and Paul George never sort of getting a rhythm and all of that stuff, you had these guys do all of those things. To turn a team that we thought was going to be, 11th or 12th in the Western Conference. If you look back at the preseason predictions across the board, they were a borderline play-in team in most organizations' sort of web outlook. To turn that into a 50-win team is just ridiculous. I just don't think Ty ever gets enough credit. He's such a good X's and O coach, and then also delivers on the player front.
What Ty Lue has proven he can do is coach superstars, young players, and role players equally well. And that's not as easy as it might sound, right? Coaching superstars is a science. Like, to get the respect of a LeBron is not easy to do. Kenny Atkinson, as great as he was, when he took over when they made all the deals in Brooklyn, it didn't work. Like, he just didn't connect like he needed to with Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. Ime's proven he can do it, although he hasn't had the superstar on the level of LeBron. The guys in Boston were young at that time. They're a young team in Houston. I think Ty is perfectly worthy of being on that list. This might be his best coaching year, to be without Kawhi for the first half of the season, to have all the injuries, to lose Paul George, and become this defensive menace of a team. They are across the board feisty in all categories. Yep. That's a good guy to have on that list. I want you to go first in this one. Defensive Player of the Year. It's another tricky one that I think we may find some areas of disagreement on. I think it's obviously an open competition now because Victor Wembanyama is not eligible for the award. As long as Victor Wembanyama is in the league, he's going to win this award every single year until he retires. That's just the way it's going to be. But now, with him out of the mix, it's wide open. Who you got?
Well, it's funny. I've heard many people sort of say this is the consolation award for DPOY because Victor was so far and ahead leading.
Yep.
If the 65-game rule did not exist, and we had more of these questions beforehand, and you were general manager in the league, would you have wanted Victor Wembanyama for 48 games, or would you have wanted whoever you voted first here for 68 games?
Victor Wembanyama for 48 games. I still want Victor Wembanyama.
So that to me says that the 65-game rule should not be involved in the voting. It's a real.
I'd say like 40, half a season of Victor Wembanyama. I'd probably take over anybody.
Right?
Yeah.
That's the question, right? When you sit there and say, how much do the games played matter? How much does availability matter? It matters a different amount with different players, right? There are some guys who you'll take only, 60% of a season with over anybody else in that category. I think Victor fits that bill for a lot of people. And again, superstars sitting out, real problem. 65-game rule in awards, not the good solution, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And this is a great example of it because no matter who wins this award, and I will tell you who I voted for in a minute, no one's going to think it matters. They're going to be like, that's only because Victor went down. Well, we shouldn't be saying that about the Defensive Player of the Year. It's a huge award. We should be giving it to the best defender this year. I do think that was Victor, but I did vote for Evan Mobley first.
Yeah, so did I. Same page.
All right. So what is your order though? Because I feel this is very controversial.
Tell me why Mobley. Why did Mobley top your list?
I just think complete from start to finish from the year. I think he can guard every position. I think the way that he sort of anchors that defense, and again, this is a team where winning matters. This is a spot to me where winning matters, and the fact that they led the Eastern Conference and sort of, as you just said, a surprise and did what they have been able to do. I think he gets credit for a lot of those different things. But it was not an easy call for me, and not necessarily in the way I've seen the national conversation go. So I'm curious who your top three were.
So I went with Mobley number 1, 2. Shot blocking, defensive versatility, defense without fouling too. Like I think that's a real asset for this team.
The versatility to me is just off the charts.
I read a quote from Donovan Mitchell. He said, when you have a guy that can protect the rim, can help a side defender, can guard isolation, can guard pick and roll, that's what makes him Defensive Player of the Year. And I agree with Donovan Mitchell on that count. Like he was the best defensive player of the league. So number 2 on my list was Zubac. And I got into all the reasons there before. He's anchoring a top 3 defensive team. He's defending the paint at a high level. He's rebounding. He's blocking shots. He's doing a whole bunch of different stuff. He was number 2 on my list. The third one was tough. And I don't think I was being nostalgic here, but I went with Draymond Green. Draymond Green was 3rd on my list, and he edges out Amen Thompson, who I don't think will ever wind up off this list ever again. Like, I think Amen Thompson in the next 2 or 3 years is going to be the best defensive wing player in the NBA. Might be the best defensive wing player in the NBA right now, but I think he's going to become the best defensive wing player and a perennial candidate to win Defensive Player of the Year. Draymond, especially in the second half of the season, especially after the Jimmy Butler trade, he was this do-everything defender for a team that was number 1 in the NBA in defensive rating. That's why I say it's not a nostalgic vote. Like, this was a guy that was surrounded by a bunch of good defenders, whatever Steph is. Jimmy's a really good defender, but Draymond was the anchor of that defense. Played a lot of 5 in these small ball lineups, had to defend multiple different guys from 7-foot bigs to 6'7" guards or wing players. I thought he did enough to get on my ballot. Didn't do enough to leapfrog Zubac. I think Zubac, over 80 games I think he played was just really good on that end of the floor. But Draymond edged out Amen Thompson on my list for 3rd.
Well, I was dealing with the same 4 candidates. I thought that they were the guys. To me, Evan Mobley was Defensive Player of the Year in a non-Victor Wembanyama environment.
The non-Victor Wembanyama.
So then it led me with my last 2 spots and how to fit those 3 guys into 2 spots. I went Amen Thompson 2nd because just the way he has sort of attacked this season, the one-on-one defense with the best players in the league. Obviously, it's a little recency bias, but the fact that he just held Steph Curry to 3 points on 1 of 10 shooting, obviously we're going to talk about that a lot when we talk about Rockets Warriors. I'm not expecting him to do that every game of this series, but I have just seen him against elite player after elite player after elite player and shut them down. And in a league where, yes, we are having a lot of great center play right now, but it is still, I think, a wing league. To be able to shut those guys down, he got my 2nd place vote, and I think you're right. I think he will be on this list, 2nd to Victor Wembanyama for a lot of years. And then I went Draymond Green 3rd also because I just felt you know, we say sometimes, you know, oh, someone's a system player and the other guy is the system. Draymond Green is the system in the Warriors. It's not just what he does. It's the way he makes that entire defense work, to what you just said. I mean, it's the orchestrating. It's the way the entire defense is built around him and what he can do and his size and all of the different things around him. I don't think anyone on the Warriors played as well in the first 2/3 of the season as since the trade deadline, since the Jimmy trade. And the 2/3 count. I mean, I heard a lot of people in these awards discussions been like, after the All-Star break, after the trade deadline. Neither of those things are the midpoint of the season.
Yeah.
They're all in the second half.
Yeah.
So you're talking about 60% of the season gone by the time we get to the All-Star game. You're talking about, what, 65, 68% season gone? By the time, don't do the numbers, I'm not being exact. But my point is that just being great since then, you have to take that into consideration.
Yeah.
I don't think it's Draymond's fault. I think he was strong all year. But the defense that you're talking about really coalesced when Jimmy got there.
Yeah, and it's tough for me to exclude Amen. Like, when people listen to this, I've got a profile of Amen Thompson up on SI.com on Friday morning. Spent some time with him down in Houston, you know, kind of got into the weeds on how he became a great defensive player. Like, his dad, basically, with him and Osser, was like, you're just going to be great at defense. Like that, you know. And his dad was actually lamenting to me, like, maybe we should have worked more on his jumper. I don't know. We want to be a great defensive player. Like, his jumper's going to come along. Don't worry about that,
I was
Houston.
going to say, defense gets you a job in the league, and they can develop your jumper once you get there.
He's great. It was weird. I had a couple of coaches, and you probably do the same thing. I text a lot of coaches about, you know, who would you pick for this? Who would you pick for that? I had a couple of coaches text me back, like, look, we love Amen Thompson, but there are some nights he's not the best defensive player on his team, right? Like, Dylan Brooks is an elite defensive player. He's on one of my 2 all-defensive teams. And Dylan Brooks will often defend the more physical wings out there. He's a nice safety valve to have when you're Amen Thompson. Draymond Green didn't have that type of guy. Zubac, for like half the season, didn't really have that type of guy until Kawhi came back into the mix. So, you know, that's why they gave those 2 guys the slightest of edge. The other one on the ballot, I guess there's 2 more to run through right now.
Yeah.
Sixth man. I think I went Peyton Pritchard. I think this is going to be a landslide victory for him. I mean, his three-point numbers, shooting numbers are ridiculous. He 3-point bombed his way to this award. 246 threes off the bench, most in the NBA. He had the most bench points in the NBA, the highest plus-minus of players on the bench in the NBA. More 20-point games than any reserve. It's kind of hard to believe that as recently as a couple of years ago, Peyton Pritchard could not crack the Celtics rotation. Now here he is. I think a runaway leader for a sixth man.
Yeah, I had him first entirely. And in addition to all those things you said, he's a true sixth man.
Yeah.
Whereas some of the guys, and this is where this list always gets murky, if you've started 20 games, I don't want to penalize you, especially if your team had an injury and that's why you started more games than you, quote, should have for a sixth man of the year candidate. But like, you do have to look at their numbers differently if they had starting spots for so many games, whether it's a quarter of the games, which I think a couple of the other guys on this list did. Malik Beasley started how many games this year?
He started some. I don't know what the number was. He was number 2 on my list, though.
Yeah, he was number 2 on my list, too. But you just have the chance to run your stats up in a different way than if you're the sixth man, where you got to get in and make it matter. And I just think Peyton Pritchard was the answer there.
Yeah, Beasley, huge pickup for Detroit.
Oh, amazing.
Like, the floor spacing that guys like Beasley provided for Cade Cunningham are a big reason that Cade took off and a huge reason that Detroit is where they are. I put Ty Jerome on my list as number 3. He edged out Naz Reid. I thought Naz Reid had a pretty good sixth-man year. Like, Naz was...
I think he did. I voted for him last year. Yeah. But I think Ty's the answer.
I kind of like... I guess Naz kind of flew under the radar a little bit because they weren't as good as they were last year, and you know he didn't blow the doors off. Like, he had kind of comparable numbers to what he had last year. But yeah, Ty Jerome, 3rd Cleveland on my list.
Identical.
The last one is the ever popular clutch player of the year. And look, I did my work on this. Don't get me wrong. I researched it. I talked to people, all that good stuff. But I don't have, my heart's not in the clutch player of the year award debate. Like, it's just not there.
We record who we think the clutch player of the year was, and we don't record who we think the best player of the year was.
Well, my clutch player of the year, and this may be controversial, especially among Knicks fans, but I went with Nikola Jokic. It was, to me, a coin flip between Jokic and Jalen Brunson. You know, both these guys had ridiculous clutch statistics. Brunson had an absurd usage rate, like 42.4. He scored more points during these clutch situations, which we should note is defined as when the score is within 5 points with 5 minutes to play, and he made more shots to tie or take the lead, 14 of them, than any other player in the league. And he took hard shots. Like Jalen Brunson is not like overpowering you with size and athletic ability. Like he's regularly going at guys bigger, stronger, more athletic than him and finding ways to score. Jokic, I went with because beyond just the similarly eye-catching numbers, the 56.5% shooting, he had more shots to tie or take the lead in the final 5 minutes than anybody else in the NBA. He orchestrates the entire Denver offense. Like that Denver offense, like I don't know what it looks like without Nikola Jokic as a part of it, orchestrating what they do there. He led all contenders for this award in assists. He got to the free throw line roughly as often as Brunson did. Denver had a plus 20 net rating with him on the court in clutch games, and Jokic had a 64% true shooting percentage. So he slightly edges out Jalen Brunson. I went with Steph Curry, number 3, which, like, Steph isn't like, if you look at some of the numbers, like, Steph's not high in the clutch statistics, but it's just like, maybe it's the eyeball test, the anecdotal, like, he just makes so many big shots. And the way the Warriors had to fight down the stretch to get into the postseason, like, Steph had to make some huge shots in those situations. So I gave him my vote for number 3.
Well, I just reversed you on the first two. I think there's a case for either one of them. I gave it to Jalen in the end because I think the way he closed games and acted in those clutch moments had less to do with him being the best player on the team, even though he was, and more because he's good in those situations. I think Nikola Jokic, who, by the way, I voted second. I mean, it's not like I'm discounting anything that you just rattled off. Of course he's going to be leading those numbers for Denver because in the first 2 minutes of the game, he leads all those numbers. I mean, you could take any 2 minutes, 5 minutes, and say, Nikola Jokic, these are his numbers. Aren't they impressive? So I think that's what sort of made the difference for me. But I had them 1 and 2. I actually put Trae Young in that third spot.
Yeah, statistically, he would have been the right call there. He was 4 in my list.
And also leads the league in assists in clutch moments, which, again, I don't think is a small deal. I think the fact that he has led the league in assists, I think, wire to wire this year is not a small deal. I think it's
Trae didn't look too happy at the end of that Miami game.
He did not.
Not the Miami game. Who did they play?
The
Orlando game.
Orlando game, yes. We'll have to see how he fares against
Could be an interesting
Miami.
Offseason, though, regardless, for
course.
Trae Young.
Yeah. I mean, look, I think he has a right to be frustrated.
Yeah.
And, again, I think that he at one point was averaging a full assist more than anyone in the league had ever averaged before. I mean, it's kind in hockey they give whole awards for it. You get a point for your assists. I mean, I just think that I think that's underrated part of the game. So when his clutch numbers also put him in that conversation for the third spot, I was like, great. And also the assist numbers kind of put him over the edge. But I remember, I have to go back and look at my ballot last year. I think I voted for Curry either 1 or 2 in clutch. I mean, he's clearly one of the most clutch players in NBA history. So you can't go wrong with him there, ever.
Well, I'm sure that people will let us know what they think of our voting in the YouTube comments and the podcast feed comments.
Bring it on. Bring it on. And by the way, tell me whether you think we should have an award for, I don't know, who's everyone think the best players this year? Again, separate from the MVP. I will not touch anyone's precious MVP. But separately, if we're saying this is who the clutch player of the year is, this is who rookie number 9 is, give me who the best player on earth is.
Hey, and if you want the clutch player of the year award to go away, I'm down for that too.
See, there you go. Boom. Awards reform. We're on the same page.